Meeple Nation podcast. My
Nice. Where is that accent coming from?
I have no idea.
Meeple Nation podcast.
Yeehaw. Meeple Nation podcast episode 481, Territory Building Games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Dave Holliday.
I'm Moken Howard.
I'm Andy Holliday.
And I'm Douglas Stewart. The Meeple Nation podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. We absolutely love our Game Toppers. And in fact, it's kind of funny. I was kind of looking around the room and I was thinking about it a little bit. And we just really don't stop acquiring new Game Toppers stuff. I think, Andy, the other day we were having a conversation about how, man, if you just ordered a few more little pieces and parts, you'd have a whole nother table you could put together.
Yeah. I think it's going to happen.
I love
See how
it.
that just rolled right off his tongue? Yeah.
Yep,
It's
of
gonna
course.
do it.
And I just purchased a few new mats because I have some side tables I wanted to put them on, and I wanted an additional mat to go on top of my table when I put the boards in so that I can have a nice mat for the upper surface as well as the lower surface. Nathan, it seems like there's always a new mat, or, you know, you recently got the dining leaf covers. It just seems like there's always new Game Toppers product rolling into Meeple Nation.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get a second set of dining covers for the other Watson over there, because I really like the idea that, currently under this one, we have Sword and Sorcery set up. We used to have Gloomhaven set up. Now we got Stars of Ikarios that we're playing on a regular basis. Frosthaven, at some point, we want to get to the table. So it is nice to be able to have that option of leaving that game, especially one of those games that takes up a ton of real estate, to leave that on the table and just be able to cover it up and play something on top of it.
Yeah, we always talk about, different ways in which we can reduce the setup and teardown time. Well, there's no better way of reducing that time than just eliminating it altogether.
It does seem to make a difference.
Well, not only that, we've complained so much about not getting to our campaign games as often as we'd like, and we already have it set up. All we've got to do is just set the time aside and get the next portion of that campaign played.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are interested in upgrading your game space like we have and continue to do, head on over to GameToppersLLC.com and check it out. You will not be disappointed.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Andy Holliday.
And I'm Douglas Stewart.
We're down to 3 today. We went from having all 5 of us here to down to 3.
So does that make us the 3 Musketeers, or does it make us the 3 Stooges?
I was hoping the 3 Amigos.
Yeah, also acceptable.
It's just the 3 Meeples.
Okay. I'll allow it. My mom recently had a stroke. We sold her house, our house, bought a house together. One of the benefits or hazards of that is that my mom was a big fan of junk mail. So she receives a ton of junk mail, and all of that junk mail is garbage. But if you want something that you can put in your mailbox that is not junk mail and is awesome, you should go over to meeplenation.com and subscribe and receive our blogs. Every time we release a new blog, that blog will come straight to your email inbox, and you'll be able to partake and enjoy that particular blog. And then you can also go to our website and find a whole bunch of other blogs. While you're there, you can find links to all of our past episodes. You can find links to our Instagram and our Instagram feed. You can find all of our bios, read up about us a little bit, and see how we all got into the hobby and what kicked off our joy for gaming and what helps us come to the table again and again. And then, of course, there is also our Patreon link. We love our patrons that have supported the podcast. They give us the opportunity to upgrade equipment, upgrade hardware, to be able to increase our sound quality and to do regular improvements to the podcast. We are so grateful to them. If you too would like to be a patron, jump on over to patreon.com/Meeple_Nation, or you can just go to our website, meeplenation.com, and right there near the top of our homepage you can find that link as well.
This week, we are talking about our discussing and talking about games in the territory building category.
I love this sentence every time that it's in there.
We really need to take that out of the show notes.
Do we?
No, but
Let me start over. This week, we are talking...
the first one's working.
Was it?
Yeah, the first one's going to stay. So.
you're good. Just move on, brother.
So, first of all, what do you guys think of? What games do you think of when you think of territory building type of games?
So the very first one that came to my mind, and we were kind of talking about this before we hit the record button tonight, but the one that came to my mind was Carcassonne. So when we talked about territory building, I was thinking that was literal, right? I am taking the pieces and I am going to build out the territory like you would the tiles in Carcassonne. Or to use maybe a more recent example, Planet Unknown, where I'm going to draft those polyominoes and I'm going to terraform my planet, but I'm going to determine how that planet gets built out and where I want to place those tiles. I'm literally building the territory. But then you mentioned, Andy, that you could also kind of look at it like I'm building my empire, right? I'm building up my territory. I'm building out onto other territory. And then I was also thinking about it and I was thinking, okay, well, these are really adjacent to like territory exploration and territory development. And then, of course, all of this is very adjacent to territory control. So I'm hoping that you guys can help me know kind of where to draw the line with this conversation.
Well, when we pick a category, and to make it easy for me to pull the curtain back a little bit, I usually go to BGG and I come up with a category and I'll look at that category and then I'll look at games that I own that are in that category. And if I own more than a handful, then I'll look at Doug's library, or then I'll look at Andy's library and try to see if something that if we have enough games in that category to talk about. So to follow that, we're talking about territory building games, and according to BGG's definition, this territory building games have the players establish and or amass control over a specific area. Often these games employ area majority, influence, or enclosure mechanics, the latter in which the areas are not delineated at the beginning of the game, but are instead created as the game progresses. So that's counting in games like Planet Unknown or Carcassonne, as you mentioned. But then as you talk about amassing control over those, you can go back to classic games like Risk, where Risk is very much territory building, where you're trying to establish your control over a certain area, and very much an area control or area influence game. So all of those kind of get bundled up together under that little territory building umbrella.
When you first mentioned that we were going to be doing territory games, what first came to my mind was actually the opposite of Doug's. It was more of the area control. That's the first mechanic that came to my mind, was area control games as you're trying to build an empire or build up your territory, which honestly used to be some of my favorite games and have become some of my least favorite games as more games have come out, and I guess my tastes have matured over the years. At least I feel like they have. Maybe they've just changed. I don't know if mature is the right word, but we're going to call it that because it sounds better. But
it sounds more mature.
It does. It totally sounds more mature. That mechanic isn't necessarily my favorite. Now, I've seen it implemented in ways that I don't mind, but I typically don't like the war style Axis and Ally Risk type games anymore. Whereas having grown up on those, I loved them. They don't draw me in like they used to.
Yeah, going over the list of games that we have, there's actually not a ton of these games that are area control.
Right, which surprised me when I started looking through it. I'm like, oh yeah, oh, that's a great game.
Yeah, but I don't know that we collectively have a lot of area control games for the reason that you just mentioned, that I don't think we collectively really like them as much or play them as much, which is why, and I don't want to get hung up on the definition at all, but to me, I think that's why it's so important to draw a line between territory building versus like area control, that style. Just because to me, especially recently, I have played some newer games that would be considered territory building / developing or exploring that I have absolutely loved, but they're not area control at all.
Right.
And then I've also played some other things that are more area control, and I don't like that aspect. So for me, and it's just a Doug thing, right? Like I have a real hard line sort of drawn between those things. So for me, I think as we move forward with actually talking about the games, I've focused a lot more on building, exploring, and developing as opposed to area control.
And I think that's probably going to be more of my focus too, is I really do enjoy the exploration. I mean, you talk about Carcassonne, using that as an example, and Planet Unknown, both of those where you're expanding the territory, you're building on your existing territory. That's going to primarily be my focus of those games, although there will be some that will trickle in there that kind of do waver out of that. But for the most of it, I mean, I think for me anyways, that exploration is one of those elements that I very much enjoy in a game. That's why my big drive for legacy games, campaign games, is because there's that discovery, there's that building out, there's trying to make the best of what you have available to you, and not necessarily trying to cut off my neighbor. I guess we're all just tenderhearted, and we don't really like to give off those bad negative feelings sometimes.
I definitely am. And
No, you're not.
what? You just proved that what I said is true and what you said is false. That hurt my feelings.
Now, you've kind of talked about this before. This is one of the reasons why you really like Seafall.
Yeah.
Because of that exploration and discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of the Pandemic series, the Pandemic Legacy series, Season 2 was the one that really, I mean, there was a lot of discovery in Season 1 and even Season 0, but Season 2, I mean, that map was blank.
Yeah, you uncover it as you play, correct?
Right, yeah.
I having not played it, I don't know for sure, but yeah, you actually are
rediscovering
world,
the earth, yeah. For me, that discovery is a big element to these games. And none of these games really, I don't think there's a single legacy game on here at all, but that ability to explore and to identify the unknown is a game mechanic or a game element that I very much enjoy.
So before we move away from area control, the actual first game I want to talk about is an area control game, and it's probably the only one I'll talk about, but it's one I enjoy, and that's Small World. It's not one I can get very many people to play because I think, once again, it's one of those area control takeover territory game type games. I think the reason why I like it over other games that are similar that I don't care for is the fact that your race that you are goes into decline and you come in as something new. It's kind of like, for those of you that have played History of the World, it's very similar to that, where your civilization goes into decline, you come in with a new civilization, quite often on a different location on the map, and you place all your pieces out, and it's almost like starting fresh, and you get to score points differently. Well, in Small World, you get to do that with an asymmetrical power. So each time you come in with a new race, you have a new race and with a racial ability, and then a random additional power that comes onto it. And I think it's the randomness and the asymmetry of it that I really enjoy. And it doesn't seem like, because you're, once again, bringing it back to similar to History of the World, when you have your civilization or your race that goes into decline, it doesn't hurt quite so much. The feelings don't get hurt quite so much when that gets taken over, because you're done with that. You know, you're kind of expecting that to happen. So it doesn't have that same feel to it. At least for me, it doesn't. And my experiences with the game haven't had those same situations where people felt like they were getting picked on or whatever, right? As far as area control games, I actually really like Small World.
I like Small World too. Small World is good. It falls into that category of game that's good. And if it's the game at the table, I will absolutely play it. And I enjoy it for a lot of the reasons that you just said. It also is one of those that I don't necessarily choose to play. And again, I think it's just because of the area control mechanism, even though I think that it does do it well. But yeah, Small World was one of the first games that I played as I was getting into the hobby. And I really like it. I like all those race combinations. Like you said, I really like the way they go into decline. I think all of that's really well designed.
Yeah, I really like the random elements or the random traits that your races have. adds to that replayability of it. I fall back onto more of that is kind of that head-to-head area control that really doesn't tickle my fancy. And so, I mean, I'd play the game, but it's not one that I would pull off the shelf.
I think the other thing I like about it is it doesn't last forever, like it seems so many of the area control games do.
Yes, no, and I think you're absolutely right that way too. You know, I can take some of those harsher elements in a game when the game is not nearly as long. It's kind of like ripping that Band-Aid off. The pain isn't there for an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours as I get surrounded and demolished.
Or just get pushed back until you're in one area and then they leave you alone.
Yeah.
You're down to one army. Yeah, we'll leave you alone.
Yep. Yeah.
We did that to my sister I don't know how many times, and she'd get so mad at us.
Your sister has a lot of issues with you, and I can see why.
So I want to talk about one that was more recent that I played that I really enjoyed. This is a game called Revive. It's been out for a little while, but it's new to the States. They had a hard time getting it over here, and it's finally on shelves, and you can pick it up most places, I believe. There's a lot going on in Revive. And you know, not going to go into like a game explanation here on this episode, but it has this really neat center map, and you kind of have a starting location and some starting tiles that surround it, and then a bunch of random tiles all around that. And so you're going to start kind of emerging from this chasm, and you can kind of build on these starting tiles, but it has a really neat way of letting you explore new tiles. So you pay some resources, you gain some benefits, you explore a tile, you get to flip it over, and then you get to choose how it's oriented because it'll have things on it. So there's kind of that strong exploration mechanism at play, but then it gives you a choice, right? You can actually choose how you want it to go back down onto the board, which depending on buildings and other things is really quite a strategic decision to make. Once you've placed it, then you have the option of building on it and populating it. And as the game progresses, those decisions that you make are really important. And so I thoroughly enjoyed the territory exploration, building, and development part of Revive.
Yeah, Revive was great. And I enjoyed how once again, this is a game that has asymmetrical powers depending on which civilization you are. The one time I played it, the power of my civilization was directly related to the board. And I needed to be building next to lakes, to water spaces. And whenever I would trigger my racial power, I would just get a ton of resources as long as I had built buildings next to those lakes. And by the end of the game, I was rolling in it.
Yeah, you were.
But it is such a cool game. And Nathan, I think you would really enjoy this one. I know you didn't get a chance to play this with us, but there is a lot of exploration, being able to flip those tiles over, and you're just hoping, oh, come on, I really need some good resources on this. And I've already got a building right here, so it'll give me some freebies just by flipping it over. And then you're disappointed, or you're really, really excited, or you have to decide whether you're going to help somebody else, because sometimes that happens. That's a great game.
Yeah, I'm excited to get this one to the table with you, Nathan. And we played this with Dave, and he really liked it as well. That exploration and discovery is really strong in this.
So it's kind of funny. I'm actually going to go right back to an area control game. A recent one that I have played is The Wolves. Played this at SaltCon Spring earlier this year was it with you, Doug?
Yeah, I was there. We played this with
William?
Will, and actually Sierra joined us, and Logan. So it was the 5 of us.
I mean, the area control's there, but I didn't really feel like it was an in-your-face kind of element.
I did. It's why I didn't like it.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. But it is, I mean, you have your wolf pack that you're trying to take over certain areas and build your wolf pack, and you can use your wolves to encourage an opposing player's wolves to join your pack, and you take them over. And it's actually a fairly quick game. I mean, it was only, I think it was less than 90 minutes with the play that we had.
About 90 minutes, and that was with 5 players.
Yeah.
So,
and but I thought the game was great, where you're just trying to take over that area. And even with 5 players, I thought the map had enough room on it that we weren't really, I mean, we were bumping into each other, but we weren't really backing anybody into a corner. There was still the opportunity to
there was room to explore and move around for sure. I do think it's important to note that this is one where the map is constructed during setup. So there's no real like strong exploration, and you're not building the territory. You're really going out to develop it, because you're building your dens and your caves, I think is what they were, and you're moving your wolves across the map. And all of that I actually thoroughly liked. It was going back to what we've kind of been talking about. It was the control aspect that really kind of ruined it for me. because there were several times when I had worked really hard to set something up for myself or to do something, and then somebody else was able to come in and quite swiftly destroy that whole plan, right? And that's all fair in an area control game. That's all good, and some people really like that. I'm just not one of those people. So I don't think The Wolves is a bad game. I don't want to give that impression, because overall, I really liked the art, the components, and a lot of the mechanisms in the game I thought were really good. I just can't stand it when somebody can come through, and I think I'm being strategic and setting all this stuff up, and somebody can come and undo 3 or 4 turns worth of progress in just a moment. And I just, the way that makes me feel, I can't stand. So that was my complaint with that one. But otherwise, The Wolves was really good.
Yeah, I would be interested to try it again with a lower player count, see how the difference that makes, especially in our group where we're not as confrontational. I still enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the game a lot. I haven't got it to the table again, but that's not because I didn't like the game. That's just because there's too many other games to play. But the way that you're trying to just manage your wolf pack, I thought was well done, and I would like to try it again.
Well, it's sitting on the shelf over there, so we'll have to get that out.
Going away from area control a little bit, but a game that can be sometimes frustrating based on what the other players are doing is Terra Mystica. Now, in Terra Mystica, everybody plays a different race, and you have different terrain on the map that you're playing on, and every player has their own favored terrain that you can build on. And you're terraforming that land, but you're also competing for space. And one thing I really like about Terra Mystica is you do get a benefit for building close to other players. You get some of your buildings, your trading houses actually are cheaper if you build next to players. And you also, when someone builds next to you, you also have the option of gaining power. It can be beneficial to build next to people, but it can be also extremely frustrating when someone starts to terraform a space that you're planning on building on. Nathan, we played the light version of this at BGG.
The Terra Mystica?
The light version of
Terra Nova.
Terra Nova.
Terra Nova. Yeah.
What did you think of Terra Nova?
I've only played Terra Mystica the one time, and I enjoyed the Terra Nova, and we only played Terra Nova the one time as well. I felt like there was elements that were missing that were in Terra Mystica that weren't there, which is obvious since it's a lighter version of it. Both played very well, and it cut the time down on the game, and it cut the teach down on the game. And so there was some very strong elements about Terra Nova that makes it worthy to put on the shelf for sure.
I can't remember if we've played Gaia Project with you or not.
Yes, yeah.
Did you like that better than Terra Mystica?
Well, yeah, it has a space theme, which is why you brought it over, because after we played Terra Mystica, you're like, I think you'll like this one better because it has a space theme, and you were correct.
But it follows it's basically Terra Mystica in space. Follows the same type of game mechanics and everything else, and plays awesome. I think all 3 of those games are wonderful. And if that's the style of game you like if you've played Gaia Project, haven't played Terra Mystica, and you don't mind it not being a space theme, jump into Terra Mystica. It's awesome.
Yeah, all 3 of them were very good games.
I really liked Terra Mystica. I also only played it once. I have not played Gaia Project, but the space theme makes me think that I would probably like that a little bit more.
We should get it to the table with Doug for sure.
Absolutely. So another one that I kind of wanted to talk about, this was when you introduced this topic, one of the first ones that came to my mind is a little game called Land versus Sea. I actually picked this up. I had a gift card given to me for Christmas this last year for Barnes & Noble. And so as a family, we went and checked it out, and I saw this little Land versus Sea in their board game section. And I had heard a couple things about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to pick that up and we'll take it home and check it out. So that day we took it home, I unpacked it, read the rules, and Lydia and I sat down and we played probably 3 or 4 games of that right in a row. It is really, really a very enjoyable game to play. I think there are some rules to play that at 3 or 4 players, but it's really a 1 versus 1. It's a 2-player game.
Right.
But basically you just have all these tiles. There's a little bit of a drafting process. You have a handful of tiles that you can choose from, but you're just going to place your tiles down and create kind of a big map. And it's fairly simple. You're really just trying to complete water spaces if you're the water player, or land spaces if you're the land player. And there are some scoring modifiers and some bonuses and some extra little things in there. But it's all very simple, plays quick, and definitely falls into this territory building category of game. Have either of you had a chance to play this one? I know it's on your shelf somewhere.
It's downstairs. I've read the rules. I'm trying to get it my wife to the physical table. She seems to be only wanting to play on BGA currently. But I have it down there and ready to play, anxious to get it to the table. I love it because one person's playing the land and one person's playing the sea, essentially, and scoring points off of either the land masses or the bodies of water. I like it. I'm very excited to get it to the table, but I haven't got me, and the game to the table at the same time.
Yeah, it's really good. And it has this really fun dynamic to it where certain tiles placed certain ways they could benefit you, but they could also really benefit the other player. Or they could really hamper you, but they can really hamper the other player. And so you kind of have to make those decisions. Okay, is this worth stymieing their plan, but it's also going to set me back? And what you're really trying to do is place tiles that extend their stuff and makes it impossible for them to complete while finishing yours. It also gives you the opportunity to score some points based on what the other player does with some of the little special tiles and things. So it's more than just I'm land, you're sea. There's a little bit more going on there, but it's, I think, just the right depth for the size and scope of what the game is.
Yeah, and to go right along with that, you have King Domino, which was one of the very first games that I thought of when we talk about territory building games. King Domino, Queen Domino, and King Domino Origins, which is one I haven't tried, but it's on the shelf. I know, Doug, that you own that.
Yeah.
In the past, you've talked about how much you enjoy that one as well.
Yeah, it plays very similar to the original King Domino, but it has some additional modules that you can add that just increase its difficulty by just a little bit and kind of let you customize it a little bit more. And I think it kind of needed that.
And then you have the King Domino expansion, Age of Giants, which I haven't. Have you used that, Andy?
My kids have. I have not played it. I've read the rules and have since forgotten the rules, but it's really simple if I recall. But my kids have played it multiple times with the Giants, the Age of Giants expansion. And honestly, King Domino is, as far as if you're comparing it to the other two, is very vanilla. So adding anything content-wise to it is always a good thing. King Domino is a great game if you're trying to teach someone who's not a gamer how to play a game. If I want to teach someone Queen Domino and they're maybe not a gamer or they're a youngster, then we'll bust out King Domino first and then move them up to, a youngin'. I'll bust out King Domino first, see how they do, and then throw them into Queen Domino after that. I need to get King Domino Origins because I played it at Doug's house once and I thought it was a lot of fun. It was great.
There's a great roll and write that goes right along with King Domino and Queen Domino, and that's Cartographers, which is not necessarily roll and write, but a flip and write, where you're building out your territory, matching up in a polyomino shape of which terrain you're going to put in which location, and trying to enclose or entrap monsters so that they're going to no longer cause you any negative points. There's a ton of little expansions, sheets out there for cartographers. Increases that replayability a whole ton. That was
a whole ton. Nice.
That was a big lead up to a little ton.
2,000.
Yeah. 2,000?
2,000.
The year 2,000?
Nope, just 2,000 pounds.
Just 2,000. Oh, a whole ton. Yes. Yep. You're right. I'm with you. It's not funny when you have to explain it.
No, Cartographers.
It is now.
No, Cartographers is great. And this is one that I ordered all those little extra map packs and things with Cartographers. And then there was the expansion or second edition. I forget what that was. Heroes or something like that.
An expansion.
Yeah. But I ordered all that. And then the app came out. And so I've been playing that on my phone. And I haven't got to play all of those little map packs. So that's another one that I'd really like to get out because I enjoy Cartographers quite a bit. Another one that I wanted to bring up really quick was Endless Winter. So the territory aspect of Endless Winter is only one small part of what that game has to offer, but I really like the implementation. So one of the things that you do in Endless Winter is explore and build on the little island or map. It's that zone where everybody starts in the middle. And you expand out and you're building your tents. And then if you can get enough tents in a geographical area, you can kind of combine them to form a village. but trying to solve sort of the puzzle that little area of land provides, I think is really fun. You can get a lot of benefits, a lot of resources. It does have kind of an area control element because if another player swoops in and can gain control of some of those tiles, then they're going to take those resources from you, which is, again, not something that I love, but I think it's light enough in this that I'm okay with it. And Endless Winter is a game that I just really love, and this is one part of it that I think they did really well.
I really enjoyed Endless Winter, and that whole exploring out from that tundra to the other kind of terra firm or whatever it is that you want to call it, I thought was a great element it employs that slight area control in there where or not necessarily area control, but area majority.
Right.
Which will give you a benefit. And does everybody get a benefit?
So it has friendly ties.
Yeah.
So if your power is equal, then you'll share it. But otherwise, it's whoever has the majority.
But still, I thought that was very well done, where that was really just one smaller element of that game. Didn't make me feel like it was a drawback to my experience. There was so much going on within this winter that I really did enjoy. The different boards that you're playing on, the different, not regions, but the different areas of focus that you have, gives that game enough replayability that that game shines. And so Endless Winter, I think, is a great game.
Yeah, 100%.
Since Dave's not here,
We don't have to talk about Terraforming
I guess
Mars.
I'll talk about it.
We don't have to.
We probably should.
It is a good game.
We don't talk about Bruno.
I mean, I throw a lot of hate at Terraforming Mars, but that's mostly because of really bad experiences.
Those were really bad experiences.
The game itself.
You had some bad experiences.
Yes.
Terraforming Mars is a great game.
It really is a good game. Don't tell Dave I said that, but it really is a good game. It's just one I think you need to play with the right people. I don't enjoy the blue cards. I guess that's the biggest thing with Terraforming Mars, but I really enjoy the whole terraforming, what you're doing on the board when you're adding water, you're adding greenery tiles, you're building cities, you're changing the landscape so that you can increase the temperature and increase the oxygen and the resource management of it. It really is cool, and you're trying to get the right cards out and everything else. I think it is a good game. It's just can be a really long game.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk about those blue cards. Those blue cards can be the bane of a game.
Sure. Yep.
And especially when you're playing that game with someones who are far more experienced and know the value of those blue cards. Yeah, it can be a very devastating first game to put a very sour taste in your mouth for sure. And so it's completely understandable to have played that game with three people who very much took a strong advantage of those blue cards and honestly strong advantage of you playing that game.
Totally. Experienced players absolutely know how to leverage those blue cards to be very, very competitive with one another, which is why experienced players should play with other experienced players and less experienced players should play with less experienced players.
For
Absolutely.
Sure. Once again, it's a game I'd probably be willing to try again. It's been several years since that Terraforming Mars incident, and I haven't played it since, and I vowed I never would. But I might be willing to break my vow if it was with the right people. Because part of the game I really did enjoy. It was just the fact that I could step away for 45 minutes and come back after passing, and the round still wasn't over.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So going back to area control, I found another great game from the year 2000 that was very much on my top 10 at the time. And that's a simple game called Carlos Magnus, designed by Leo Colavini. You have this doge that goes around the board, and the boards is not necessarily a board per se. It's a group of hexagon clusters that arrange around the center of the table, and each player is trying to gain influence by gaining control of one of the 5 colors, and then on their turn they can try to add that color to their influence or add that color to one of the clusters on the board or in the play area, so improving their pull on that cluster. And then if they can gain majority of that cluster, then they'll put one of their markers there. And if they have their marker on adjacent clusters, those clusters will merge until eventually you'll get to the point where you've put out all your markers. Carlos Magnus is a great game, again, from the year 2000. Very simple, but one that I enjoyed. Neither of you have played that, right?
No.
I have not. Now, this is an area control game. Is it I didn't mention this about one of the things I dislike about area control games, and one of those things is the fact that many of them that are like that are player elimination. Does Carlos Magnus is it a player elimination game, or is it more along the lines of like Small World that is not?
No, it's not player elimination, but there are times that a player there's luck involved. So on your turn, you're going to roll dice. Whatever the face on that dice is a color, those are the colors that you're going to gain. And so you are limited to the luck of the influence that you're gaining. So there is the opportunity, yes, to have bad rolls. And I hear something that D6 hate you.
I'm out.
Not just me.
I'm out.
I mean, it's a 4-player game, but does play best with 3. And I think that target player count is what really allows for it to not cause one player to just get low influence on everything. With 3 players, that allows players to see that advantage and be able to monopolize on what they would consider a bad roll to their advantage. I think you both would still walk away not hating it.
I don't know. Rolling dice.
D6s in particular.
Yeah, it's always a little sketchy. If we're talking about territory control, development, exploration, I think we have to make just at least a quick mention of Catan, right? It was in many ways one of the grandfathers of these types of games. One of the originals, really, laying out the map, exploring and exploiting it for its resources. And then with future iterations of Catan, in particular like Seafarers, for example, that really allowed for setting up the game so that you had kind of the central island and then you could actually explore off to unexplored areas of the map, which was something that I really enjoyed. Back in my Catan days, the Seafarers expansion was one that I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, Seafarers, I think, opened that game so much for me. Cities and Knights, I think, was my favorite expansion.
Yeah, mine too, ultimately.
Just because it allows for that each player to kind of build up in their own way and gives you a little bit more. It's not necessarily an asymmetric power, but it kind of can be.
Correct. Yeah.
And but Seafall was huge, and again,
Seafarers
was huge. And again, going back to that whole exploration and my love for exploration, it is no surprise that Seafarers was.
Well, you took Seafarers to a whole different level.
Yes, I did. I mean, I included we played Seafarers with the 5 and 6 player expansion. I made a whole big map that filled the folding table completely. It was a scary game to approach, but I was tickled pink with it. And I'm pretty sure I lost hard.
And that's the last time Nathan ever did anything with house rules.
No,
actually, there were some rules.
No, there were
scenarios.
Was it actually a scenario? Yeah. Was it? Oh, really?
There were rules for building the bigger maps like that. Yeah. I remember a few game nights of my own that involved some rather large, unexplored maps of Catan.
So it's funny, Seafarers is the one that I struggled to actually get into. I'm with you guys. Cities and Knights was my favorite by far. And so I got to the point where we didn't play it very often. So if it hit the table, I wanted to play Cities and Knights. So
with that, I think this episode's getting a little long. Were there any final ones you wanted to just shout out or make mention of real quick?
Well, there's a lot, but apparently they're on your guys' top 5. So I think maybe I'll just wait till next week.
Sounds good. I'm actually really looking forward to talking about our top 5s because, yeah, there are a few on there that we haven't talked about tonight that I have deliberately been holding back on.
Yeah, me too. I keep trying to bring them up, and I'm like, oh, that's on Andy's list. Oh, that's on Doug's list.
Yeah, I agree. And I have just one more. I'm just going to talk very briefly about it. And that it was one of my original purchases once I started getting into games. So this is an oldie. I mean, I bought it early 2000s, and that is Tigris and Euphrates. We played Tigris and Euphrates a lot. I think it was one of my like 3 or 4 games that I owned at the time. So it got a lot of table time in its day. And I haven't gotten it to the table in probably 15 years, something like that at least. I guess it's kind of funny how that works when you're very, very first starting to get into the hobby in those first few games, even if they're not great games, which it's a fun game. I wouldn't consider it a great game, but it introduced me to just different things. And I guess I have an appreciation for it because of that.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about being in the hobby back around the year 2000, where there's so many new surges of new mechanics, new ideas that were out there that the vastness of the games that are available now, we kind of lose those little games, those little moments that not necessarily the best game, but those games that were fun to us back then that provided the experience to new mechanics.
Yeah, we owe a lot of modern board gaming and its mechanisms and success to many of the titles that came out in that time period.
So that wraps up our discussion on territory building games. Let us know if there's any we missed that you thoroughly enjoy. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, tell us what your top 5 are.
Until next time.
We'll see you expanding your horizons and building out those territories at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.